Aloha and bienvenidos a ARCOIRIS, a project of proposed strategies for motivating young learners of Spanish using the ARCS model. Arcoiris is the Spanish word for rainbow. What do you think arco means? What about iris? Does it remind you of a word in English? And where does the word rainbow come from? For that matter, where do rainbows come from? These are the kinds of questions that you can use to catch the attention of young learners. Attention is the first component of the ARCS model, and it refers to the practice of using novel approaches to catch the interest of your audience, thus motivating them to learn. The second component is relevance. This is when you connect new learning material to what your audience already knows, as well as their goals for learning in the future. The third component is confidence, and this refers to designing learning tasks in such a way that they gradually increase in difficulty, allowing your learner to feel more confident as they move through the tasks. The final component is satisfaction, and this is when your learners are able to walk away from their learning experience knowing that their hard work and dedication has yielded important results for their learning. The ARCS model was developed by John Keller over the course of his career, and it establishes a systematic approach to motivational design that can be integrated into the instructional design process. The ARCS model has proven effective in a wide variety of contexts all around the world, including the field of foreign language learning. This brings us to our context, which is young people learning Spanish as a foreign language in preschool through the 8th grade. For this project, we'll be looking at one particular learning institution, Annie Wright Schools in Tacoma, Washington, where students begin taking Spanish in preschool. Studies have shown that preschool students enjoy learning a foreign language and are intrinsically motivated to learn as long as it's fun. However, other studies have shown that intrinsic motivation tends to wane over time, and so more motivational interventions are needed as learners grow up. In order to help people involved in education design and develop motivational interventions, Keller proposes the 10-step process of systematic motivational design. The first step is to obtain course information. This could be a description of the course, the reason why the course is offered, and a little bit about the person or people teaching the course. The second is to obtain audience information. This, of course, is information about the people who will be taking the course, that is, your students. After obtaining information on the audience, you want to analyze this information, look for patterns, and come up with some ideas of what the motivational needs are. As well as that, you'll also analyze existing materials. What materials are currently being used in the class, and how motivating are they? After that, you will list your motivational objectives and the instruments that you propose to use to measure them. After that, you can list potential tactics, things that you will try to do to increase motivation in the class, followed by a selection and a process of designing those tactics. Once you have designed the tactics, you can work on integrating them into the instruction. This could look a lot like a lesson plan with motivational tactics built in. After that, you will select and develop the materials that will be used in the class. And finally, come up with an instrument to evaluate and revise the class for the future. The first step of the process is to obtain course information, so let's take a closer look at the course. Spanish exposure at Annie Wright starts in preschool and continues through middle school, with students gradually spending longer in class and doing increasingly difficult tasks. The courses use a wide variety of activities and materials, usually created and developed by the instructors themselves. The reason for the course is that early exposure to a foreign language can lead to lifelong learning, and by exposing students to other languages, they're also exposing them to other cultures and preparing them to become global citizens. Finally, the instructors in the Spanish courses generally employ an interactive, inquiry-based approach to teaching and could be described as generally creative and comfortable using technology in their classrooms. Now let's find out a little bit about the students. While the students at Annie Wright come from a diverse array of cultural and linguistic backgrounds, they have a lot in common. For one thing, they're all either native or fluent English speakers, and they all come from families who have chosen to invest heavily in their children's education. Annie Wright is a tight-knit community, and most of these students have known each other for quite a long time and have been taking classes together since childhood. They're also quite comfortable interacting with adults and generally seem to value the attention and recognition from the adults in the school. In analyzing the audience, I found it helpful to break the students up into 3 different motivational profiles based on both my own classroom observations and Keller's reference to McClellan's analysis of learner needs. The first group of students I like to call the eager beavers. These are the students who will sit at the front of the class and are always eager to raise their hand and participate. These students appear to be highly motivated. Next are the shy ones. These students can be a little bit more difficult to reach at first, but with patience and attention you can usually get them to warm up. Finally, you have the troublemakers. And while I certainly don't think it's appropriate to label any students as quote-unquote bad kids, I think it would be a bit naive to think that there aren't some students who enjoy causing a bit of trouble. All of these different groups have distinct motivational needs, and as a result, it is best to use slightly different strategies to reach them. It's also important to keep in mind that a particular individual may pertain to any or all of these groups and shift between them fluidly. Now let's take a look at the students in the front row, the eager beavers. These students are generally motivated by what McClellan calls a need for achievement. They tend to show the highest level of attention readiness and lead the class in student engagement. These students perceive most school-related tasks as relevant and display a high level of confidence in their knowledge and abilities, probably cultivated from their experience in their other classes. Finally, these students have high expectations for satisfaction. If you deliver a good course, they will be satisfied, but they may feel disappointed if the course doesn't meet their expectations. Now let's take a look at our second group, the shy ones. These students are motivated by what McClellan calls a need for affiliation, that is, social connections. They may appear to have a lower level of attention readiness as they can easily be distracted by their social ties. These students tend to perceive school-related tasks that relate to social connection as the most relevant. They may display what looks like a lower level of confidence in their knowledge and abilities, but with frequent praise and encouragement, this can be overcome. Finally, these students tend to find satisfaction in forging friendships, thus they will benefit from having the opportunity to do collaborative group projects. Finally, we'll take a look at our troublemakers. These students are likely motivated by what McClellan calls a need for power. They want to be the center of attention, and this can go either way. These students tend to perceive relevance in consequences, whether good or bad. They like to test boundaries. Sometimes these students can display an overconfidence in their knowledge and abilities and can benefit from a little extra challenge. Finally, these students will find satisfaction in getting attention, which can be positive or negative. The best strategy with them is to offer opportunities for them to get positive attention in the classroom. In order to help us better interpret the results of our audience analysis, Keller has given us this neat little graph in which the different components of the ARCS model, that is attention, relevance, confidence, and satisfaction, can be placed on this actual arc. And as you can see, the performance is going to be the highest when the motivation component is in the middle, neither too high nor too low. Now, if you take a look at the graph that I've created here, based on my audience analysis, you can see that the motivational components for the Eager Beavers group are all concentrated here in the middle. That is because their motivation and their performance are both already high. Now, when it comes to the shy ones and the troublemakers, you see that their attention and their satisfaction potential are slightly lower, but with the troublemakers, there's the possibility to go either way, depending if they can get good attention. If they can't get that, they'll go for the bad attention, which will lower their motivation and that of the rest of the class. Where the two groups differ most significantly is in confidence. As you can see, the shy ones tend to suffer from a confidence level that might be a bit too low, while the troublemakers are more likely to suffer from a confidence level that's a bit too high. Now, one thing that all the groups have in common is that as they get older, they require more interventions to establish relevance and are more likely to ask that eternal question of why do we have to learn this? So based on this, we've decided that the best strategies would be to leverage the needs of the shy ones and the troublemakers so that they can become as motivated as the Eager Beavers, and both the performance and motivation of the entire class will increase. Now that we've analyzed the audience, let's take a look at the existing materials that are being used in the Spanish classes. As mentioned previously, almost all the materials are created and developed by the teachers, with textbooks only being used in middle school and only sparingly. The kids seem to enjoy novel approaches to their learning. They like to sing age-appropriate songs, for example. In preschool, this could be Dora the Explorer, and for the 8th graders, it might be some clean versions of popular reggaeton hits. They also like to watch YouTube videos, again, curated for age appropriateness. They like to work on group projects where they can collaborate and create a tangible product to take home with them. And finally, they like games, whether computer games or interactive classroom games, they like to play. Now that you've analyzed the course, the materials, and the students in it, it's time to list your objectives and the techniques you will use to assess them. As far as motivational objectives go, one of the main objectives is to see full and active participation in the Spanish classes from all, or at least almost all, of the students. Next, we would like to see a measurable increase in motivation as a result of these interventions. And finally, we'd like to see increased excitement and comfort with speaking the Spanish language. But how do you measure these things? That's where the assessments come in. One thing we could do is to keep track of student participation with either participation grades or certain awards for good participation, depending on the grade level. To measure an increase in motivation, Keller actually has created for us a wonderful instrument called the Course Interest Survey, which can be adapted for different learning environments. And finally, for observing the increased use of the Spanish language, this would have to be done through classroom observations on the part of the teachers and recording student progress. Now that you've decided on your motivational objectives, it's time to list potential tactics. This is where you're going to create a really big, extensive list of ideas that you have for reaching the different components of the ARCS model. I would recommend, and Keller also recommends, organizing them as such. So here you can see a few of the ideas that I've had for attention, relevance, confidence, and satisfaction. And again, I stress this is a very abbreviated list. If you read my paper, you will see a much, much longer list of potential tactics. After making a list of the potential tactics that you'd like to use, it's time to select and design the specific tactics that you're going to use, and to decide when you're going to use them. At this phase, Kelly recommends organizing them by things that you will do throughout the class, at the beginning of class, during the class, and at the end of the class. And here, rather than organizing the tactics by the ARCS component, whether it be attention, relevance, confidence, etc., that you're hoping to target, instead you will list the tactics, and then at the end you will include which of the ARCS components you are hoping to reach. So for example, if you give praise often throughout the class, that is probably geared towards the confidence component, whereas beginning lessons with novel approaches that get students moving, thinking, or speaking in Spanish at the beginning of class might be a way to target the attention component. After you've selected and designed your tactics, it's time to integrate them with your instruction. As mentioned previously, this will look a lot like a lesson plan. And in my paper, I have written two very detailed lesson plans, which I've abbreviated here, one for preschool and one for 8th grade, that essentially walk you through the entire lesson with the learning objectives, warm-ups, lead-in, the main lesson, and as you can see, both both lesson plans ideally will end with a review game which hits all of the components of the ARCS model. Now, the thing to do here that's very helpful, as you're writing your lesson plan, just take a quick moment to mark at the end of each element which component of the ARCS model you're trying to target with that activity, as you can see that I've done here. After integrating the ARCS components into the instruction, the next task is to select and develop the materials that you would like to use in your lesson. My recommendation for this context would be that teachers work together to collaboratively assemble and share materials that they've had success with in their classes. This could be things like YouTube videos, songs, stories, activities, and games that their students have enjoyed. The important thing is to select these materials based on their motivational value. You can always take a moment to ask yourself with each material, which component of the ARCS model, attention, relevance, confidence, or satisfaction, am I hoping to target with this material, and how well does it do that? The last step is to evaluate and revise your motivational strategy. And luckily, Keller has given us two really useful tools for doing that. One of them is the Course Interest Survey, which is designed to be used in instructor-led classrooms. It can be modified and adapted for different age groups and contexts, and it measures the individual components of the ARCS model. That is to say, you'll be able to get a sense of how effective your strategies are at getting students' attention, at making things relevant, building confidence, and satisfying their learning needs based on this survey. The other tool is the Instructional Materials Motivational Survey, which is quite similar to the Course Interest Survey, except for that it is designed for use in self-directed learning environments, where the materials themselves are responsible for motivating the students. Just like the CIS, the IMMS can be modified and adapted for different age groups and contexts, and it measures the individual components of the ARCS model. Because we are dealing with an instructor-led course, in this scenario, we will be using the Course Interest Survey. Now let me talk just a little bit about the timeline for the implementation and evaluation of this motivational strategy. To begin with, teachers will meet before the start of the school year to select and design materials, and periodically throughout the year to evaluate and revise their materials. A modified version of the Course Interest Survey, or CIS, will be given at the middle and end of each semester, that is, 4 times during a school year. Teachers will also observe their classrooms in an ethnographic manner and report back on their findings to the meetings. Finally, materials can be further revised after the end of the school year so that they'll be in tip-top shape for the following year. Now let's talk about how we can adapt and use the CIS in our particular context. For interviewing younger students, that is those in the preschool through the 5th grade, the CIS could be administered orally by homeroom teachers. That way the students will feel totally comfortable expressing their thoughts about the Spanish classes. And some examples of how the questions from the CIS could be adapted for this age group are as follows. Number 1, the teacher makes us feel excited about learning Spanish. Number 2, I can use what I learn in Spanish class outside of class. Number 3, I feel like I can do a good job in Spanish class. Number 4, Spanish class is boring. And number 5, the teacher teaches me important things. And students who are old enough could respond using a 5-part Likert scale. But for the youngest students, it would probably be best to just do a simple thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs in the middle, and take a tally of how many students responded which way to each question. When adapting and using the CIS in middle school, the survey could simply be delivered as a Google form to be done individually by the students. And the questions would not have to be modified that much. They would only be changed to include wording related to the Spanish teacher or the Spanish class, as you can see in these example questions here. Another important thing would be to include an open-ended question or an open text field so that students can share their thoughts freely without any particular suggestions from the survey itself. Finally, a good strategy if you want to know what people think about something is to listen. Ethnographic research in education has proven to be very effective at capturing the voices and experiences of young people in schools. For that reason, teachers should be encouraged to objectively observe their students' interactions with the course to gauge motivation, as well as conducting small group and one-on-one interviews with students to get their thoughts and opinions. In conclusion, it is hoped that implementing the ARCS approach will benefit not only the students, but the teachers as well. By trying new techniques, teachers may feel themselves becoming stronger and more creative in their field. Also, by working together to improve the curriculum, teachers and students will be brought closer together. And in the end, everyone becomes motivated. All right. This concludes our ARCS motivational journey. Adios, amigos.